There you go. Let's. This one. I think we'll like this.
That's charging this?
Yeah. So this one will go like this.
I'm gonna have to put you down in a minute.
It's okay.
I'm gonna have to put you down in a minute. Well, maybe not. Maybe not.
There you go. They look nice. They look nice over there. Yeah. You look nice over there? Yeah.
We're in good position,
Yep, good position.
and that means I'm ready to go.
Yes, sir.
So I can start. Okay, here we go. Okay, kitty cat. Hey y'all, this is Mark G Abolitionist on the air with you at KEXU 96.1 FM LP Revolution Radio, where we explore the connection between Imperial War and incarceration. I don't limit myself to being a prison abolitionist because there are more structures and institutions that I seek to abolish than just incarceration. For example, white supremacy and racism, two different things. Male supremacy and patriarchy, two different things. Class supremacy and wage oppression, two different things. And Imperial War. Yes, Imperial War is an institution of the American Empire. But let me be very clear. The United States military is an institution of the American Empire, as we all know. However, it serves the institution of Imperial War. The need for Imperial Conquest shapes and defines the U.S. military. In fact, the European settler need and lust for conquest of Indian lands made the development of a military necessary. All who opposed or resisted were either killed or imprisoned. The first reservations were in fact prisons. I'm going to talk a little bit about Vietnam. Y'all make sure you also hear Afghanistan, Iraq, Palestine, and any and every city in America. In October 1966, I was 19 and in Vietnam. He was a 9 or 10-year-old boy begging for food on the side of the road like hundreds of others. I was riding shotgun in the truck. I was the one with the gun. The driver crushed his skull with a can of sea rations. In the 80s on up into the 90s, he was a 9 or 10-year-old boy standing on lookout on the corner. And when the shooting car came around the corner to take out the store, he got splattered on the floor. In the 90s, on up into the 2000s, he was a 9 or 10-year-old boy swinging a rock-loaded slingshot around his head. And when he looses his rock missile to fly and shatter against the armor of an American main tank that belches forth a round that blows him beyond the thin blue line that surrounds and divides and separates our communities. So is the functioning of America. The functioning of America abroad and the functioning of America here at home. Y'all might notice the little kitty cat that came and climbed up on my lap. You know, kitty cat got here before we started the show, and kitty cat's real comfortable, and I'm kind of comfortable too. Feeling the kitty cat on my lap. You know, kitty cat's purring. I'm liking that a whole lot. I'm enjoying that. We're going to go into a little bit of discussion about Imperial War and how Imperial War functions and the results of Imperial War. Imperial War is the desire of a country to take the land and possessions of another country, of another group of people. America the United States of America has engaged in Imperial War and Imperial Conquest since before its inception. When the colonists from Europe, mainly England, first landed on these shores, they engaged in imperial conquest of the lands and the peoples who had lived here for hundreds of thousands of years. Some examples of this are the Pilgrims. We know about them, we learn about them, we learn a history in our schools, though that history is not very historical, lacking in many facts, and definitely lacking in proper understanding of what was going on. The Pilgrims supposedly were escaping persecution in England. They were a religious sect, a small group, and they felt oppressed, were in fact oppressed in England. They came to America. It was a business venture. More than anything, that needs to be remembered, that it was a business venture. The individual people, the Pilgrims, were, yes, seeking a new place where they felt they wouldn't be persecuted for their religious practices. But the money that supported them, the money that enabled them to make the voyage, came from backers, came from bankers, came from rich people who sought to gain profit from the adventure. The Pilgrims came, landed at Plymouth Rock, supposedly, encountered and interacted with the Pequot people who inhabited that area of the coast at the time. And in the first winter, the Pequot people helped and aided the Pilgrims, helped them with farming, helped them with techniques, helped them with understanding the new land. We learn about the so-called celebration that occurred, creating the holiday that we call Thanksgiving. Little known, most significantly and most important, is that 15 years later, that same settlement, some of the same people went to the Pequot and killed every man, woman, and child in the village, the people who had helped them, because they wanted the land. They did not want to have to compete with the indigenous people, the Pequot, who had lived there for thousands of years. And so they went and summarily executed everyone and took the land. Wall Street, another place that we're aware of, that's in our lore, it's in our history, is the seat of the stock exchange and American finance capital. Some finance capital in the world, Wall Street. Wall Street is on the lower end or the southern end of the island of Manhattan. The island of Manhattan sits in the estuary of the Hudson River. As an island, it's surrounded by water. The island of Manhattan is about 13 miles long and around 3 miles wide. It's 39 square miles. The city of San Francisco in California is 49 square miles. The Dutch came ashore on the southern tip of Manhattan Island, right at the mouth of the Hudson River, where it dumps into the Atlantic Ocean. The Dutch came ashore. There were people living there. Because of Columbus, we call them Indians. There were people living there, the indigenous people, who had been there for thousands of years. The Dutch built a wall from tip of water to tip of water along the southern end of Manhattan Island. They built a wall of fortification separating themselves from the indigenous people that lived there. In so doing, they stole that land, took possession of it, and claimed it as their own. A short time later, they told the people who lived in the village not far from them, rather close, that they wanted them to leave, that the Dutch wanted the land. The indigenous people said, no, we have been here for many years, we will continue to be here. The Dutch climbed up on the ramparts of their wall and with their muskets killed all of the people who lived in that village. Today, if you go to Wall Street in Manhattan, it's a regular paved road, cars drive on it and so forth. You can find the actual location of the wall that the Dutch built. It's marked in the pavement. There are little posts where the wall actually stood. You can trace the line of the wall. Imperial Conquest has been an integral, necessary part of the development of the colonies and later the development of the United States of America. This is history we don't talk about very much, but it is critically important for us to understand. The imperial nature of the conquest and its prolonged and protracted time frame. The conquest of indigenous peoples continued and continued and continued. During colonial times, a bounty was placed on indigenous people. There was a price for an Indian man, there was a price for an Indian woman, and there was a price for an Indian child. Think about that a moment. Prices put on the lives of human beings. If European settlers killed an indigenous person, man, woman, or child, they could claim a bounty. There was a price put on the lives of indigenous people because the colonists wanted to eliminate the indigenous people that inhabited the colonies, or the area that the colonists were calling their colonies. The forest lands, the mountains, the coastlands. These were all wanted by the European settlers. and they busied themselves about its conquest. A trade developed. Bounty hunter. We know this term today. There are TV shows that talk about bounty hunters. In colonial times, bounty hunters were men who went into the wilderness hunting other human beings and killing them for the bounty. But a bounty hunter, or a group of bounty hunters, would spend several weeks in the wilderness hunting. What a term. Looking for human beings to murder so that their lands could be stolen. It's from this practice that we get the term redskin. We refer to First Nations people, indigenous people, as redskins. We have athletic teams with that naming. The term redskin comes from the bounties. There had to be a way for a bounty hunter to prove how many human beings they had killed to collect the bounty. And they had to be able to tell the difference between a man, a woman, and a child. And they all had the same kind of hair. Bounty hunters would scalp, would cut off the scalp. That's take the hair with some of the skin from the person's skull. And that would be their proof that they killed a human being and were entitled to the bounty. But that poses the question, how do you tell the difference between the hair from a man or the hair from a woman or a child? The hair is all the same. It was all black, thick, luscious hair. How do you tell the difference? What they did was they cut the penis from the body of the man they had killed, and they put it with the hair, the scalp, that was taken from that human being. And that severed penis was called the redskin. The bounty hunter would say, I have 10 scalps, 5 redskins. They would get the bounty for 5 men and for 5 women or children. Because women and children were of lesser value. Even in their killing, they were of lesser value than men. Talk about a patriarchal view of the world. I'm going to close here. Remember, we're going to be talking about Imperial War, Imperial Conquest. As this nation moved across the continent, there are many other stories and traditions that we will discuss. This is Mark G Abolitionist, getting ready to close out with you. Would like to tell you all, we are the ones we're waiting for. That's real important. We are the ones we're waiting for. We need to get moving. Please join with me, the Prisoners of Conscience Committee, All of Us or None, and formerly incarcerated and convicted peoples and families movement. And we say, well, what's the call? Free them all. Dare to struggle. Dare to win. All power to the people. Say Ashe. Appreciate you, my friend. You know, actually, if you're late again, you're gonna get 2 demerits for it.
For sure.
You know, all right.
Let's
You know,
hope for those.
and when you get 10 demerit points, you're gonna take one of your gold stars away from you.
Oh, damn. I only got so many gold stars.
I'm telling you, man, you know.